Hello, Life Vantage. This is Darren Jensen coming to you live from our Studio B here at our world headquarters in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's a beautiful day here, as always, at Life Vantage. And today is a continuation of our Business Leaders series. And I really enjoy this series because we get to interact with some of the great minds that are in the world. And I think being exposed to great minds is what I really crave, that to learn more things, because personal development and bettering yourself is such a big part of what we do. Today, we have Alan Stein on, and let me just read you a little bit about Alan. Alan Stein Jr. teaches proven strategies to improve organizational performance, creative, effective leadership, increase team cohesion and collaboration, and develop winning mindsets, ritual, and routines. A successful business owner and veteran basketball performance coach, he spent 15 years working with the highest performing athletes on the planet, including NBA superstars Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, and Kobe Bryant. The strategies from Alan's book, Raise Your Game: High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best, are implemented by corporate teams and sports teams around the world. And with that, Alan, thanks for joining me today and really sharing some of your insights to everybody here at Life Vantage.
Oh, my pleasure, Darren. It's awesome to connect with you, my friend. I look forward to a fun chat.
Oh, we're going to have it. I'm sure. I'm looking forward to some of the stories that you've got. But hey, I mentioned that you have a book, Raise Your Game: High Performance Secrets from the Best of the Best. And typically, you know, when I start one of our broadcasts, we normally give away a prize. But you said that you had something you'd like to give away.
Yeah, well, and I'd love to give away a few actually personalized and customized signed books. If folks watching this right now, if you just want to tag 3 of your friends that you believe would benefit from the conversation that we're about to have, just tag them and they'll be entered into the drawing. And I don't even have a set number. You know, I always come from a place of service. So let's just see what the response looks like. And
Great.
Nothing would make me happier than to send out half a dozen books to some folks that believe they'd benefit from it.
I don't know if you have one sitting there, or I think I see one hanging on the wall behind you.
Yeah, I've just got a sign. My stack of books is out of reach right now, so I don't want to leave the frame.
Show us again, really quick. Just move. Okay, Raise Your Game. Okay, I think it was still focused on me, and I'm like, hold on a second. We want to make sure we see the book.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Alan, with Life Vantage, typically we want to know who you are and what makes you tick and what drives you. I think that really gives us an insight into the information that you're going to share with us. Can you help us get to know you?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to start with the present. So at present, I'm a very amicably divorced father of 3. I have twin sons that at the time of this recording, they'll actually be turning 10 in just a couple weeks. And I have a daughter that will be 8 this June. And I'm a professional speaker and author by trade. But the reason I knew that we would have such an enthralling conversation is everything and all of the work that you all do towards not only having healthier lives, but extending the length of those healthy lives is something that I've really been into over the last several years. I'm 44 years old, so I guess statistically I'm on the back 9. So I'm always looking for ways where I can keep my longevity and my vitality and my energy up as high as possible. Because in order to chase my 3 kids around and to be on stages all around the world, it takes a lot of energy. And I take a lot of pride in taking care of myself. And I know that's what you all are all about. But as far as diving a little bit deeper, basketball was my first identifiable passion. And I fell in love with the game at 4 or 5 years old. And I'm so grateful that here 4 decades later, basketball is still a major pillar in my life. I was able to play at the high school and college level and then decided to become a basketball performance coach and did that for almost 20 years. And my job was to help players improve their mind-body connection, their athleticism, help bulletproof their bodies to be resilient against injury so that they could perform their skills at a higher level. And I was able to work at 2 really nationally renowned high school programs here in the DC area that have produced a combined dozen players that are in the NBA right now, including, as you mentioned, Kevin Durant. And during that time, I got to learn from some amazing players and some amazing coaches, but it also opened the door for me to do some work with Nike basketball and Jordan Brand and USA basketball. And then I was able to be a fly on the wall and learn from the best players to ever play the game. LeBron James, and you had mentioned Kobe Bryant and Stephen Curry and Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis, as well as some of the best coaches to ever coach the game. And I decided 4 years ago that I was going to take everything that I had learned from these players and coaches, and I was just going to pivot to a new audience, which now I consider the corporate world and folks like your LifeVantage sales professionals, and teach them the mindsets and rituals and routines that elite athletes use to perform at a high level, and translate that over and show them how they can use those exact same principles and strategies to perform their work and their lives at a high level. And that's really what I do now. And as you can probably sense from my energy, I have an absolute blast with what I'm doing. Nothing fills my bucket more than serving others and sharing these things that allow them to be their best self.
Well, that's great. That's great. I've actually got a couple of questions. I'll ask those a little bit later. I have a 15-year-old that loves basketball, and I never played basketball. And so I'll have to throw in a question here or there, how he can become better. But let me start off with the first one, because, let's talk about principles that can help drive, I think, business of any type forward, whether, no matter what channel that you might be in. And I think that our people listening here, they're looking at creating sales organizations, and they're entrepreneurial, and most of them have never been in that type of channel trying to grow it.
Yeah.
I know that you've got a really cool story about Kobe Bryant that I think teaches one of the, at least some of these principles. You want to share that with us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And for context, I've opened every single keynote, workshop, and training that I've ever done in my professional career with this story. And one of the hardest weeks of my career was the week following his untimely passing, because for the first time, I wasn't sure exactly how I should start one of my talks, and I felt the need to tee it up differently. But I found now, having done numerous keynotes and workshops since, that this story is even more important to tell now. And I do believe it certainly pays tribute to his legacy. But back in 2007, Nike Basketball flew me out to Los Angeles to work the first ever Kobe Bryant Skills Academy. And Nike was bringing in the top high school and college players from around the country for an intense 3-day mini camp with the best player in the world. And I don't know how many of your listeners follow basketball, but they need to know that in 2007, Kobe was the best player in the game. Now, as I mentioned earlier, basketball was one of my first identifiable passions. So having spent my entire life involved in the game, I had always heard this urban legend of how insanely intense Kobe's individual workouts were. Well, here I am as a young coach, and I find myself on his camp staff. So I figured this was my chance and this was my shot. So at my earliest opportunity, I walked up to Kobe and asked if I could watch one of his private workouts. And he was incredibly gracious, and he smiled, and he said, "Sure, man, no problem. I'm going tomorrow at 4." And I got a little bit confused because I had just got done looking at the camp schedule, and the camp schedule clearly said that the first workout with the players was the following day at 3:30. And Kobe recognized that confused look on my face, and he clarified that with that's 4 a.m. Well, I wasn't smart enough or quick enough to come up with an excuse on why I couldn't be somewhere at 4 a.m. At least not an excuse that a guy like Kobe Bryant's going to accept. So I pretty much committed myself to being there. And I figured if I'm going to be there anyway, I may as well try and impress Kobe. I may as well show him how serious of a trainer I was. So I came up with a plan to beat him to the gym. So I set my alarm for 3 a.m. The alarm goes off. I jump up. I get myself dressed. I hop in a taxi, and I head to the gym. When I arrive, it's 3:30 in the morning, so obviously it's pitch black outside. And the moment I step out of the taxi, I can see off in the distance that the gym light's already on. And even from the parking lot, I could faintly hear a ball bouncing and sneakers squeaking. And I walk in the side door. Kobe was already in a full sweat. He was going through an intense warm-up before his scheduled workout with his trainer started at 4. Out of professional courtesy, I didn't say anything to him. I didn't say anything to his trainer. I just sat off to the side quietly. And for the first 45 minutes, I was actually shocked. For the first 45 minutes, I watched the best player on the planet do the most basic footwork and offensive moves. Kobe was doing stuff that I had routinely taught to middle school age players. Now, I don't want your listeners to get this twisted. This was Kobe Bryant. So he was doing everything at an unparalleled level of effort. He was doing everything with surgical precision, but the drills he was doing were incredibly basic. Well, his whole workout lasted a few hours. And once again, when it was over, I didn't say anything to him. I didn't say anything to his trainer, but my curiosity eventually got the best of me because I had to know. So later that day at camp, I went up to him and asked and said, Kobe, I don't understand. You're the best player in the world. Why are you doing such basic drills? And once again, he was so gracious, and he flashed that $1 million smile, but he said with all seriousness, why do you think I'm the best player in the world? Because I never get bored with the basics. He said, I never get bored with the basics. I'm talking to Kobe Bryant on the Mount Rushmore of basketball, and his secret is that he never gets bored with the basics. And as obvious as that may be to many of the folks listening and watching right now, that was an epiphanal, life-changing moment for me at that time, because it's when I realized that just because something is basic, it doesn't mean that it's easy. Those are not synonyms, and yet people often use those words interchangeably. Just because something is basic, it doesn't mean that it's easy. If it was easy, everyone else would already be doing it. And as you and your team knows, we live in a world today that tells us we should skip steps, that's telling us we should always be looking for some type of shortcut, that's telling us we should always be chasing something that's new and flashy and sexy, and just ignore what's basic. But it's been my experience and the experience of the high performers that I've worked with that anytime you skip over the basics, you're making a grave mistake, because the basics work, and they always have and they always will. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about improving basketball skills, or we're talking about the ability to improve your salesmanship, to improve the culture of your organization. If you want to get good at anything, personally or professionally, individually or collectively, you have to learn to not only respect and appreciate the basics, but you have to work towards mastery of them during the unseen hours.
Boy, I'm still just digesting all of that. That's, never get bored with the basics. That's a powerful idea. So simple, not easy to do, but a simple concept. And, I'm still trying to digest what you're talking about, where Kobe was attributing his success to being an expert and focusing on those basics.
Absolutely. Well, here, I'll give you a perfect example. I know, we're recording this in early 2020 and the NFL season's over, but inevitably this happens every single NFL season. A team will lose 2 or 3 games in a row. And in the post-game press conference, the head coach will come on and will say something to the effect of, on Monday at practice, we're going to get back to the basics. Which, of course, in football is blocking and tackling, throwing and catching. And they say, we're going to get back to the basics. And that always makes me chuckle, not because I think I'm smarter or a better leader than these NFL coaches. They're absolute geniuses, but it makes me chuckle because the answer is so obvious. If you believe the solution to your problem is getting back to the basics, well, then that leads me to ask, why did you leave them in the first place? If the basics are what's required to solve your problem, how about you never leave them? You make them a daily staple in every practice, every weight room session, every film session, and you never leave the basics. And then more times than not, that won't end up being your Achilles heel. And the coaches you can love them or hate them, but you take someone like a Bill Belichick or a Coach K with Duke basketball or Nick Saban, and you take those coaches, they never abandon the basics. When you go to their practices, there is a set period of time that is devoted towards the fundamentals, the blocking and tackling and catching and throwing. And in basketball, we're talking about footwork and passing and shooting mechanics. They do that stuff every single day. And they're working with the best players in the world, but they always commit to those basics. So for me as a young coach, I'm sitting there thinking, if Kobe Bryant and Coach K and Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, if the basics aren't too, if they're going to stick to the basics, then certainly that's something that I need to follow, because success leaves clues, and we're foolish whenever we choose not to follow them.
That's great. I'm just writing notes down here because I always try to learn from who I'm talking to. So I take notes and I transfer them over so that I keep these ideas, and I build this library of things that I can always refer to. So, okay.
And here, well, while you're taking those notes, and I love that you do that. I do the same thing, and I've got files and files of them. Here's what I'd love for the folks listening and watching right now to do is, when we're done this video, is to take a few minutes to reflect on what are your basics. And you can pick any area of your life. If you have a struggling marriage and you want your marriage to be more fulfilling, what are the basic building blocks of a thriving marriage? If you want to stick completely to business and you want to sell more LifeVantage products, what are the basics of being an elite professional salesperson? And start to figure out what those basics are. You know, Kobe established that the basics of being a great basketball player is footwork, because everything a basketball player does on the court starts at their feet. So he figured if I can have elite footwork, then that'll give me a foundation to become an elite player. And I want folks to reflect and start to figure those things out. And, you know, I have a few top of mind that I know are basic that would help you actually in your marriage and help you sell more. And then you have to figure out ways to practice those basics on a daily basis. And if you work towards mastery of that, it's not a matter of if you're going to be successful. It's just a matter of when.
That's great. Great advice. Okay. So let's talk about something here. So they're the basics here. We got to be focusing on basics, and that is the key to success. Now, I know what I'm supposed to be doing quite often, because obviously these basics are in many areas are well defined, just like you were saying with basketball, footwork. You know, there's football, there's blocking, there's tackling, there's catching the ball, there's running with it. I mean, there's some basics that you need to be working on.
Yep.
How do we close that? I think you referred to it as the performance gap.
Yes.
How do you close what we're supposed to be doing because we know it, and then what we actually do? How can we bring those two closer together so that there's either no gap or very little gap?
I love where you're headed with this. And that is what a performance gap is, Darren. It's the gap between what we know we're supposed to do and what we actually do. And that's one of the things that again is a step towards moving to the highest performance that you're capable of, is closing that gap. And folks can have those gaps to varying degrees in different areas of their life. You know, I know some folks that from a health and fitness standpoint have a very narrow performance gap. They know what they're supposed to eat and they eat it. They know they're supposed to get quality sleep and they get it. They know they're supposed to be physically active and they do it. But then those same people might have a huge gap when it comes to their finances. You know, they know that they're supposed to put money away for the future, but they don't. They know that they're not supposed to live above their means and rack up huge credit card debt, but they do it anyway. So no one is immune to a performance gap. And the first thing is all of us need to have the humility and be vulnerable enough to acknowledge that we have performance gaps. But as you just mentioned, we have to strategically figure out ways to lower them. Like yourself, I'm huge into development, personal and professional development. But I'll say, as sure as I'm sitting here, that if I didn't learn another thing for the rest of this calendar year, if I didn't put any new knowledge in my head for the rest of 2020, but all I did was put into action every single thing that I currently know, my performance would skyrocket exponentially. That's how much stuff I'm leaving on the table of things that I know I should be doing and I don't. And I say with full humility, I'm probably at the upper end of the spectrum because this is stuff I teach. So here I am. I travel the world teaching folks how to close performance gaps, but I have the humility to acknowledge that I still have them, that I'm far from perfect, but I'm better than I used to be. And to me, that's what's most important. I want to make sure your listeners know that don't ever get stifled by perfection. Be much more concerned with progress. And I'm proud to sit here today, Darren, and tell you that I have smaller performance gaps today than I did a year ago. And if you and I were to grab a cup of coffee a year from now, I can promise you that I'll have even smaller performance gaps then because I'm conscious of it. So I always want folks to be more concerned with the direction that you're going as opposed to where you are at this moment. And I know that was a mouthful, but I'm a systems and strategies guy. I'm a coach at heart. So I actually do have a 3-step process for eliminating or reducing performance gaps, if you'd like me to share.
Obviously would love that. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'm sure everyone listening too would love that. Go ahead.
Well, the very first thing you need to do is you need to pick one habit or one behavior that you want to look to change. One of the big problems people make is they establish 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 things that they know they should be doing differently. And then they end up dissipating all of their energy and focus amongst those 7 things, and they don't get very good results. It's my opinion of why most New Year's resolutions don't work very well. It's because people wake up on January 1st and they say, I'm going to change these 5 things about myself. And a mere 3 weeks later, statistically, they're not doing most of those things. And I believe as human beings, we need to have razor sharp focus on what we want to improve. That's actually backed up by a gentleman named John Berardi that started Precision Nutrition. And he did a study and found that with one group that they were studying, if they tried to change one singular behavior at a time and put all of their focus and effort into that one behavior, they had an 85% chance of changing that behavior. I like those odds. That's pretty good. But then he found in the next group that when they intentionally split and tried to change two behaviors at the same time, the rate of success dropped to 35 or 40%. So that's less than half. And all they did was try to change two things at once. And then they added a third group, people that were trying to change three things at once, and their rate of success dropped to 4 or 5%. So it shows that as human beings, we're not meant to change a lot at one time, that we need to have that singular focus. And what I usually do with folks is say, pick an area of your life that you want to improve. For the purpose of this call, why don't we say you want to improve your ability to sell LifeVantage products? So you want to become a better sales professional. And I want you to come up with a list of things that you know that if you started doing these things, it would improve your sales. But I also want you to look on the other side, and I want you to come up with a list of things that you're doing that's probably sabotaging your ability to be an elite sales professional. So I want you to come up with a list of things that you need to stop doing. So maybe you have 3 or 4 things that you know you should start, 3 or 4 things you know you should stop. And then I want you to look at that list, and I only want you to circle one. Not one on each side, just one total, the one that you think would have the biggest impact on your ability to become an elite sales professional. And that's the one behavior that you're going to have just razor sharp precision on. So that's step 1, is we're going to pick one. Step 2 is I want you to make a commitment to yourself to do this for 66 straight days. Whatever this behavior is, this thing I'm going to start, I'm going to do it for 66 straight days, or this thing that I'm going to stop, I'm not going to do it for 66 straight days. And there's a ton of research out there on habit building, and I'm not too worried about all of the research, but I've seen enough studies that say that around 66 days, and I like that number because it's fairly arbitrary. It's easy to
it's an odd number.
Yeah, and it sticks out because it's a little longer than 2 months, which is doable, but at the same time, it's still a stretch. That's not easy. And if you can consecutively do that for 66 days, research has shown that it won't automatically change anything on the 7th day, but about that time, you'll start to significantly feel less friction, that either doing or not doing that thing will just slowly become easier to do or to not do. And I like that because I'm a very visual guy. So for me, I literally have paper calendars, get at Office Depot, and I take a big red Sharpie, and every day that I do or don't do the thing that I'm set and focused on, I just put a big red X on that day. And my goal, come hell or high water, is to make sure that I can get 66 red X's in a row. Now, as I mentioned, I'm human, just like everyone listening. I'm fallible. I'm going to miss a day here or there, once again, but I'm not going to get stifled by perfection. I just want to make sure at that point, I'm going to do what my friend James Clear says, and that's not miss twice in a row. So if I get 7 or 8 in a row and then I have kind of an off day, I'm not going to pout about it. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to blame anyone else. I'm going to wake up the next day and start a new streak of red X's. So that's step 2.
So you've got to do 66 in a row. So you start the clock over again if you went 7 or 8 days and then you didn't do it, and then does it start a new 66-day period?
It can. And a lot of it depends on the habit. That's an excellent question. Very insightful. It just really depends on the person, because once again, I can't stress enough that there's nothing magical about this 66 days, that I'm not saying that on day 67, this has now just become an ingrained part of your life and you don't even have to think about it. So I'll leave that up to the person doing it. Okay. Me personally, I have a little bit of OCD. I start the clock over because I want 66 in a row. But that's just my mindset. If someone says, hey, I had 21 days in a row, I missed number 22, but I'm getting back up on that horse for day 23, and you can ride that out to 66, I still think that's phenomenal. So I'll leave that as kind of a reader's choice on however they want to do it. So we've got the pick one. Then you're going to be self-committed to doing that thing for 66 days. And then the third part, which is really important, is you need to keep the spotlight of accountability on. And you do that by inviting in your inner circle, your family, your friends, if you have older children, your spouse, your business coworkers and colleagues. I want you to assemble a group of people that love you and care about you and want to see you happy and want to see you succeed. And you ask them, if you need to, you beg them to hold you accountable. So, for example, I'll just make this easy. I want to jumpstart a health and fitness and wellness program. So I've decided that I'm going to go for a 30-minute brisk walk every single day. I'm going to start my day by putting on my tennis shoes and going outside for a 30-minute walk. And I'm committed to doing this walk for 66 straight days. But I have the humility to acknowledge that that alone is going to be tough. So I ask you, Darren, and I ask Brady, and I ask a few other people that I'm close with, can you please check in with me every day and make sure that I'm going for this walk? You know, since you and I don't live near each other, I'm going to ask you as a friend and colleague, will you text me every morning and ask if I went for my walk? You know, ask what route did I take, or did I do the treadmill, or did I listen to something? Like, just check in on me. And if I have 4 or 5 people doing that, that's going to raise the level of accountability. That's going to increase the chance that I don't just wake up one morning and go, you know what, I don't feel like going for a walk today. Because I know now I'm going to have to disappoint 5 people that are rooting for me and that are cheering for me and that are going out of their way to take a few minutes to text me and check in. And Darren, I don't want to disappoint you. So in that moment of weakness, when I don't feel like doing it, I'm going to dig deep and find something within myself to go for that walk, so that when you text me later today, I can say with great pride, yes, I did. And I've done this with myself for the last several years. And if you pick one behavior, you commit to it for 66 days, and you have a team to hold you accountable and keep that spotlight on, you have a great chance of changing that behavior. And then this is the best part. As you guys are continuing to break new ground at LifeVantage to extend our lives and improve our not only our longevity, but our vitality, once I've started to groove that behavior, now I just start the whole process all over again. So maybe for the next 70 or 80 days, I'm focused on walking for 30 minutes. And then the next 60 to 70 days, I'm going to be focused on cutting out soda or cutting out junk food. And then I'm going to follow that same process. And then another 60 or 70 days, I'm going to pick something else. And if you do the math, if roughly every 2 months, you're either adding a positive habit or you're taking away a negative one, in a year's time, you will be a completely different human being than you were when you started. If any person listening or watching to this could add 3 or 4 really positive habits and eliminate 3 or 4 negative habits, you will see every area of your life raise accordingly.
Well, that's great feedback. I know as I was walking myself through the process, because I'm going to do this. I'm going to
awesome
this,
and I'll be happy to hold you accountable.
Oh, well, thank you. I know that as I build up more and more days that I've done something, it's like gamification. Yes. I'll get out, because knowing that I'll start over again, because I'm very OCD like you. Yeah. 66 days, I'll think, well, this is going to cost me 32 days. So yes. I'm going to go out and get that done. So
I love that. Well, and I'll tell you this, I don't know if you're familiar with the guided meditation app called Headspace, but you want to talk about gamification. And there are a lot of apps that can be incredibly helpful for a lot of this stuff. Headspace keeps what they call your run streak, and it's consecutive days that you've gone through a 10-minute guided meditation. And this morning, at the time of our recording, I know this is going to air differently at the time of this recording, today was my 952nd straight day of beginning my day with a 10-minute meditation. And the reason I bring that up is over those 952 days, I have radically transformed my ability to be still and present, my mindfulness, my mood in the morning. Like it's changed tremendously. And I bring that up because most people will say, you know, I tried meditation a couple times and it just didn't do anything for me. Well, yeah, well, that's the same with going for a run around the block. If you only do it once or twice in your life, it's not going to change anything. But just something as small as a 10-minute meditation done consistently every day can have a profound impact on mindfulness, awareness, presence, mood, outlook, just as going for a 30-minute walk or reading for 15 to 20 minutes or listening to a show or a podcast like this. Those things that appear to be little things end up making a huge difference when you compound their interest with doing them daily for long periods of time.
No, that's great. Well, I guess one final question, because boy, the time is just flying by really quick.
It does fly.
So interesting. Look, you've interacted with a lot of elite athletes, a lot of famous people. Is there one in particular, particular experience or impression that you have that really had a massive impact on you? I know the one that you just shared with Kobe was big. Do you have any others that really just made a massive impression on you? And
I
why?
do, and I'm going to share one that I'm really hoping will be incredibly helpful to your sales professionals. Outside of the players that I have a personal relationship with, Steve Nash is my favorite basketball player of all time, and I had a chance to meet him and chat with him one time, but I didn't get to know him on the same level as some of the other players. And for those that don't follow basketball, back in the early 2000s, Steve Nash won back-to-back MVP titles, and the first year that he won the MVP, he only led the NBA in 2 statistical categories. The first, which most people would guess, would be assists. He was a point guard. He likes to share the sugar and pass the pill. He gets other people involved. He likes to set teammates up so that they can score a basket. Certainly the sign of a great leader and a great teammate. But the other statistic that he led the NBA in were touches. And I'm talking about physical touches, high fives and fist bumps and pats on the backside. And if any of your listeners are wondering, how could I possibly know that Steve Nash led the NBA in high fives, fist bumps, and pats on the backside? Well, it just so happens there was a research team from UC Berkeley who was conducting an official study because they wanted to measure if showing signs of outward enthusiasm actually equated to more wins on the court. So they hired a team of researchers who watched every minute of every NBA game and made a tally mark every time a player gave a high five, a fist bump, or a pat on the backside. And the Phoenix Suns, who Steve Nash played for at the time, were so enamored with this study that they actually hired a full-time intern to count just for Steve Nash. And in the very first game that the intern counted, in one regulation game, Steve Nash delivered 239 high fives, fist bumps, and pats on the backside. I mean, he was an absolute furnace of human connection. And I bring that up because what I would love for your sales professionals, first and foremost, make sure you know that I'm not telling you to go out and high five or pat on the backside your customers or clients. What I'm telling you to do is find the emotional equivalent of those. Find ways that you are constantly going out of your way to fill someone's bucket and to make an energy deposit to them. Do something that raises their game and lifts their mood. Because I'll tell you what, anytime you walk into a room, the person that is the biggest giver, the biggest bucket filler, the biggest person that is always serving others, they're the most magnetic and attractive person in any room. And as a sales professional, that's what you want. You don't want to feel like you've got to be hunting people down to share with them the amazing benefits of LifeVantage. You want to become so attractive that people gravitate towards you and say, hey, I want some of what this guy's been drinking. This guy just has an infectious energy, a big heart. I want to know what he's doing, and it'll make that connection even stronger. And here's a tool that you can use. I call it 10 assists. Every morning when you wake up, I want you to put 10 rubber bands on your left wrist. And every time you give an assist, and I'll let you quantify who the group is. It could be one of the people in your organization, one of your colleagues or coworkers. It could be a prospect. It could be a current client or customer. But every time you give an assist to them, and that's anything that you do that goes above and beyond what you're required to do, you take one rubber band off of your left wrist and you put it on your right wrist. But then here's the rub. You can't go to bed until all 10 rubber bands are on your right wrist. And so you know for a fact that you've done nothing short of 10 things to fill someone else's bucket. And I promise you that if you get in the habit of being very intentional and very purposeful about always giving and sharing and pouring into others, you will attract more business than you'll know what to do with.
I completely agree with that. Great recommendation there. Great. Right down. Yeah. Boy, you've given me a couple pages of notes here that I've got to transfer into. I keep an electronic version where it gets my handwriting and transfers it to everything. So it's really good. So I'm going to have to do that. But Alan, thank you for joining us. Time well spent. I've learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else has just been taking notes feverishly. If you want to move your head sideways really quick, we'll see your book again back there. Guys, raise your game. High performance secrets for the best from the best of the best. I'm assuming that's available like Amazon, iBooks, all of that, right?
It sure is, yeah. And I even did the read for the audiobook. If folks like to listen to their books, you can get it that way as well.
You know what? I think I'll do that. I've got a 45-minute commute, so I do a lot of learning back and forth. So maybe I'll have to turn that into one of my 66-day things.
I love it.
Well, Alan, thank you very much for your time. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know that you've got a busy day, but it's always best to fill your cup, better yourself, and today has been well spent. So till next time, we'll see you later. Thank you.